Hey guys, it's been a while since we did a big update video about the QuinLED-Dig-Uno and the QuinLED-Dig-Quad boards. So in this video we'll talk about quite a few things both concerning the pre-assembled boards and the DIY versions. So sit down because I'm going to go over a lot of stuff in a short time. Right, let's see where to start. Let's start with pre-assembled news. Last year during the Christmas season, I noticed that a lot of people are now using the boards to run their Christmas pixel light LED shows. And well, that's awesome. The Ethernet version really makes a big difference if you're running anything with real-time LED data. One bit of news about that is that next to WLED, a different firmware called ESP Pixel Stick, it's been around for a while, is now available in version 4 beta. I've worked with Martin Muller, who's working on developing the version V4 version of that firmware to incorporate all the definitions for the QuinLED-Dig-Uno and Dig-Quad boards, including all of its variants. ESP Pixel Stick kind of has a different approach than WLED about what the firmware needs to do, but a little bit more about that later. What I wanted to start with is that a lot of people ran into 3-wire or data plus ground running in the same cable issues with the boards. I have a detailed video and article where I dive into this subject and show you what's happening, but as a temporary fix at the time, I introduced these little QuinLED data booster boards. They have a switch on there with which you can flip between a 249 or a 33 ohm resistor, basically adapting the LED data signal for the type of wiring you're running. 249 is great for 2-wire power plus 1-wire data, and 33 ohm is perfect for a 3-wire cable like X-Connect and such. And while that worked great, I will try and keep improving the boards where I can. So I started prototyping, and after redesigning the level shifter stage on the board, I've added dip switches, and you can now select which resistor you want to run per channel right on the Dig-Uno and Dig-Quad boards. This way you don't need a data booster board anymore, and you can always adapt the channel to whatever specific situation works best with, well, your setup. And, well, the price for the board even stays the same, so more features for the same price. Now, this doesn't make the data booster boards useless. They're still great to use to extend the data signal when, for instance, you need to bridge a longer distance gap in your LED strip, boosting the data signal to reach further. They are also easy to use to inject power if you don't want to or can't solder in a certain location. So, I hope that's finally going to squash that issue some people were having running 3-wire cable, and hey, as I said, making the boards more versatile is always a good thing. And, well, linked to that, I'd like to talk about a new product. The QuinLED-ESP32-AE+. It's a whole mouthful, but this is a new ESP32 variant which adds a lot of features. This board is compatible with all recent QuinLED Dig boards, so the Dig-Uno pre-assembled starting V2 and the Dig-Quad pre-assembled also starting V2, and slots in like any of the current QuinLED ESP32 boards. It's not compatible with the current DIY versions, or rather it will have its limitations, such as the QuinLED ESP32-AE Ethernet board also had. But more about the DIY boards in a little bit, because those limitations might not exist that long anymore. So keep watching. Now, the QuinLED ESP32-AE+ in its full form, its final form, has a touch button on top. That was basically a free function. And then it has an IR sensor, so you can use one of those little simple IR remotes to control WLED without having to grab your phone. Then it has a digital microphone, and combined with the audio reactive fork of WLED, you can use it to have WLED react to your music in real time using the ESP32 itself. Next, it has a micro SD card slot with which you can add large amounts of storage to your ESP32 projects. I've tested it with up to 64 GB cards, and that worked perfectly fine. And last, it has 3 extra level shifted LED output channels with a 33 ohm resistor. Now, That's a whole lot. And while there will be a version available that indeed has all these functions on the same board, I don't think software even exists to make use of it all together. Next to the full version, I'm releasing a version which just has touch plus IR plus microphone. Perfect if you have a Dig-Uno in your room and you'd like to add a second way to remote control it, or might want to make your LEDs dance to the music. And then a second version that just has touch again, plus SD card, plus 3 times extra LED channels. That one again is perfect if you want to run your LED show but can't get Ethernet to where your controller sits. Remember that ESP pixel stick I talked about a little bit earlier? In the version 4 that's currently being developed, it has the ability to be put in what's called FBP remote mode, where it doesn't need to stream all the pixel data over the network anymore, but can read it locally from the SD card. And only a sync packet is sent now and then to keep everything working as one big show, but that's fine to travel over Wi-Fi. So this is a great way to add new boards to your LED show without having to rely on Ethernet only connections. The first batch of these boards is now available from the worldwide store, and they are currently only sold as an upgrade board, so only available separately. They'll also always come with the ESP32 attached, just like you're used to from the Ethernet version. They will be only sold in the AE version, hence the name AE+, because basically with the amount of copper in the board and sitting on top of it, otherwise the Wi-Fi reception would be bad, and I think a lot of people wanting to use it will opt for the external Ethernet, or the external antenna anyway, to have a good reception. They also aren't as cheap as I wanted to make them, but still, they are a very easy way to add a lot of functionality to the board if you want to. And as I mentioned before, if you have a Dig-Uno or Dig-Quad pre-assembled from the last year or so, you can just take out the old ESP, plug in this one, and bam, everything's connected. And on that subject, talking about pre-assembled sales, with all these variants, I keep introducing new stuff, things are kind of growing out of control, so we'll need to make a change there. Currently, all boards are pre-paired and pre-configured with a configuration for that exact board. But because of all the variants and board types, that means we have a huge amount of stock and they never run out evenly and are becoming a mess to keep track of, and we have to rearrange stuff after a while. And it's becoming too much to handle. So we're going to need to make a change there. We're going to stop pre-pairing the ESP32 boards with the Dig boards, but instead only do that during shipping. Now, on the website, you won't really see a change in that regard, though. It's more of a back-end thing. So you'll still be ordering a Dig-Uno ABE or a Dig-Quad AE, etc. The downside is that the configuration it will arrive with will be a bit more basic as before. So for instance, on the QuinLED-Dig-Quad, it'll only have the LED 1 and LED 2 channel pre-configured and not LED 3 and LED 4 anymore. Before, this was needed because WLED didn't allow configuring this in the GUI after flashing, but that's all been solved with the newer versions, so doing it separately makes more sense. So, since people have to go in and change these values to however many LEDs and channels and segments and stuff they're running anyway, I'm hoping that's not going to be too big of a change in actuality. The same goes for the new AE Plus boards, for instance. You'll need to configure everything such as the touch sensor, IR, or the microphone yourself. For the microphone, you'll need to be running the audio reactive version of WLED, for instance. But nowadays, it's very easy to flash that on the board yourself, either using OTA or using install.wled.me. So I think that should be pretty easy. ABE or Ethernet, of course, will still come with the Ethernet version pre-installed. And as always, I'll have detailed pinout and other guides showing you what you need to set, but for some, it might be a slight change in what to expect when they first boot the boards. Hopefully, on the back end, managing stock and other variants, this will make a lot easier, because it's becoming a lot for my guys, and it's sometimes even delaying releases and stuff like that. So, yeah. Right. Whew. Okay. I know that's been a lot, but there's one more important bit of news that I want to highlight, and that is DIY. I've not forgotten about you guys. I've been hard at work for a few weeks now, and most of the important stuff is done and live as you see this video. This means that the QuinLED-Dig-Uno DIY V3 and the QuinLED-Dig-Quad DIY V3 are both fully updated and live in regards to specifications, hardware guide including PCB links, and the soldering guide. So if you've been waiting for the updated versions, you can go ahead right now. These boards are rebased on the current pre-assembled versions, including pinout changes that have happened, and well, that also means, for instance, that now the ESP32-AE, the normal version, would just work and you don't need the legacy version anymore. And things like the AE Plus board are now fully compatible with the boards. But of course, they also remain compatible with the generic Mini 32 ESP32 modules, so you can pick whatever ESP32 you want. Other changes are an optimized board layout, improved safety circuits, 5V EXTs now VXT on both boards because they can accept more than 5V only, and most importantly of all, they now prominently feature the WLED logos on the board. But in essence, the boards and their functionality remain the same, just updated to align better with the pre-assembled again. So if you have old version PCBs, no need to get the new ones unless you need a very specific new or changed feature. So whatever version you decide to go with, pre-assembled or DIY, you can use either my ESP boards including Ethernet and AE Plus now, or get everything pre-assembled whatever way you want to do it. Right, that was a lot to go through, and trust me, there is much more still coming this year. I've already shown the Dig to Go plenty of times, but we're making progress there, and here's a quick look at one of the test case designs we're working on with a plastics company. Well, a 3D print of it at least. And there is another secret project I'll soon start sharing more about. People in the last live stream have already seen a sneak peek of it. So, QuinLED-Dig is alive and kicking, and I'm glad to see so many people using the boards. DIY pre-assembled, as I said, whatever the case, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. It keeps me motivated to keep pushing and updating and changing the boards where needed, and keep making more guides and videos. And I really love to see all the results that come by in the showroom channel on the Discord server. Any day with blinking LEDs is a good day in my opinion. Right, with that, I'm going to end this video. Let me know in the comments if you made it this far, because it was a lot, and what you're most excited about, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.